Well, good morning, fellow humans. I hope everyone's having a beautiful morning or evening or whatever time that you see this or whenever. Been a little bit since I've put a video out, but that's okay. Life, the world has changed about 64 times since the last time I uploaded, but that's all right. I wanted to kind of switch gears today because of that very fact. The reality is that, well, obviously we're in the throes of the world order is changing, the power structures of the globe are changing, social structures are changing, blah, 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 blah. And the past videos that I have been putting out have been a little bit, I wouldn't say dark, just a little maybe stark from my position or from my standpoint. Especially the last one, it had some emotive content to it, and that's the point of this, is to set the truth free in a socially acceptable context. And with consent. My assumption is that if you're watching this, you have given consent to me sharing my worldview, and whatever you do with that is really kind of up to you. Anyway, the point is that the last number of videos have been appropriately, in my opinion, and properly circumspect for the world that we are living in, the challenges that we are dealing with as a species, as a culture, as disparate different subcultures, and as, like I said, living as a middle-aged or older middle-aged white man in the United States. And I have, over time, if you've actually listened, and it's okay if you haven't, to be clear, things emerge as they go along. I have alluded to a lot of things in my past. There's some certain degree of context associated with my worldview that I think is worth sharing, but not in a biographical sense. I don't think that I'm that. I have a pretty decent sized ego, but I balk at writing my own autobiography. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Anyway, that said, I think that when we have these sharings, when you are sharing, and especially in a public venue like this, it's important to kind of at least have some kind of context or shared understanding of where certain types of languages come from, or where certain viewpoints come from, or the vocabulary of communication, of interpersonal communication. It's always good sometimes to kind of have a little bit of background about the individual that you're speaking with, that you're communing with, that you're socializing with, for lack of that you're socializing with. I have referenced my family numerous times, and I think that part of my setting the truth of human existence in the 21st century, 2025, part of that is sharing familial experiences, especially those that could be helpful to others. I think that my family has a relatively unique experience when it comes to generational interactions, or when it comes to kind of pseudo-intellectualism, religion, society, all kinds of philosophy. I think that my upbringing is unique enough that it is worth kind of framing sometimes. That's what I mean, I think, by giving a little context, because there are some topics that I would like to talk about, that I would like to share, that require a certain degree of understanding of where I'm coming from. especially when it comes to society and the crossroads, the interplay between human species, scientific method, the evolution of the development of our species, the subjugation or the cooperation that we have with our environment, religion, psychology. There's a lot of things that I think are really interesting to discuss in a public venue, and that I would like to kind of share. But all of that aside, I would like today or this morning, I want to talk a little bit about a different kind of vector that has been instrumental in my life and my worldview, and that's technology. Now, science. Let's not talk about science per se, the scientific method, blah blah blah. How you got to technology. Let's set that aside. I want to be a little bit more practical today, or practicable, because we are, not only is the world order changing, not only is the idea of nation states, superpowers, the distribution of wealth and power on the globe, all of those things are changing. They always do, they always have, but there are epochs, right? I think at some point, at some level, we are living through a disillusionment, social disillusionment of the idea of superpower, the clash between colonialism, manifest destiny, all of that, and the reality of a globalized economy, of a globalized world order. Those words actually are, speaking of religion and background, global world order and new world order are really triggers. Those are trigger words for a lot of people, but I'm not using them in that context. I'm just using them objectively. The order of the world is changing, and technology has a huge part of that. It always does, right? When you think about our species, the discovery of fire and the ability to use it. As I have referenced before, I believe personally, like in terms of the crossroads between technology and our species, our inventiveness, or whatever you want to call it, whether aliens gave it to us or not, that's a joke, to be clear. These types of paradigm shifts, and I use that not in a corporate speak manner, actually using the word appropriately. These shifts these paradigm shifts, a lot of them are facilitated or kicked off or mutated to different types of technologies that emerge. Fire, for instance, like I said, the bicycle, and the transistor. Those are three that I really am fascinated, because the world literally changed from a Homo sapiens standpoint, and then eventually from a world standpoint, from even an environmental standpoint. Those three innovations in our development, in our capacitive development as a species, I think are fundamental. And I think that you could spill a lifetime's worth of ink on any one of those, and people have, on like how these things change us as humans, how they change our society, how they change our wealth dispersal, etc. Anyway, the point is, technology is what's the right word? Technology is obviously a catalyst for human change. So like, again, back to my point, not only are we living through these social revolutions, these kind of re-evaluation of morality, of the social contract, of the global contract, all of those. Not only are we dealing with that, but we're also dealing with the iterative kind of wave property, I guess you could say, of the change in technology. There's a lot of buzzwords out there right now: artificial intelligence, I can't even, AI, AGI, ASI, all of these different types of concepts that are really starting to come to fruition. I think that what most people don't understand is that these techniques, what we would refer to currently as artificial intelligence, these are old computational techniques. In the scientific community, a lot of this stuff's has been used for literally decades. It's just that it's not accessible. It hasn't been from a consumer standpoint, from a social standpoint. It hasn't been particularly accessible. I have things to say about this. I have thoughts. I have some very strong thoughts, actually, about this that have developed, especially in the last number of, let's say, 5 to 10 years, as kind of some of these techniques, some of the computational constructs are coming to fruition and beginning to impact our lives, or the way that we. There's a lot of, right now, a lot of ink being spilt on AI and what that means and how is your job going to go away and what's, human 2.0, I'm being replaced by a chatbot, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of fear associated with this, and that is also a part of, technological integration. That's normal. You see it with any kind of fundamental technology shift or exploitation, social exploitation, the car, etc. And that brings me to my point today, because I want to establish that I want to kind of share where my relationship with technology, when it kind of started, and how deep it is, and why I think that it's important when we begin discussing the future, when we begin discussing emerging philosophies, emerging morality in the context of these new social tools and pressures. So I'm a relatively, I'm not aged. I'm in my early 50s, and it's a weird time to be that. Even as far as careers are concerned, it's weird. 50 years old. Anyway, other topics. Let's stick to technology. My relationship with especially computational technology began, and telecom and networks, and basically technology facilitating social connections has gone. I think my relationship with it is far, I don't want to say deeper, but certainly older than very, very many of you. Like I said, I'm in my early 50s. I was an extremely early adopter as a child. My first computer, my first, I guess you could say, computer was a Heathkit. It came in a bag, right, and had 4 dip switch. It was garbage. Well, it wasn't garbage. It was fascinating. It was an interesting tool. But it was basically it was a project kit from Heathkit, which is really pretty much what was all out there. Within reason. Certainly I couldn't access from a social or from an economic standpoint. I sacrificed a lot to get that first kind of taste. And living in the environment, the environment that I was living in, being reared and trained in the social traditions that I was, and the philosophies and the religious philosophies that I was, it was kind of a really strange thing. In fact, I think my early embrace of technology probably had some degree, or at least it became some degree, of my own version of rebellion, of youthful rebellion. probably better than some, better than many of my colleagues or many of my peers at the time. I am a preacher's kid, and all of the tropes do apply. I would say that kind of technology and, well, we'll put it this way. I would not be who I was or who I am today, regardless of whether that's good or bad. That's up to you. I mean, really, that's up to others to decide whether you're a good person or not. I know who I am, to be clear. But I think the two things when I was a child that kind of I used to exhibit my own independence was when I was exposed to Carl Sagan's work at a very early age. And there's a whole story behind that because it certainly, I was not exposed to it in a positive light. Let's just put it that way. I was exposed to it as Carl's work and his writings and his, I was exposed to that material in the context of ridicule and as an example of the evils of humanism. I was exposed to the Carl Sagan's thoughts and ideas in that context. And that was also part, I think, in some ways, led to my intellectual rebellion, at least from my father and from his philosophies and the worldview that he embraced. The other was obviously technology. My father was a writer. He was a college professor, a theologian. He was a lot of things. But one of the things that he did do as a writer was he was always in search of modalities to get the word out. One of my father's main phrases in life, I guess you could say, or main axioms in life is, a Bible verse that says, "The entrance of thy words giveth light and understanding to the simple." I find that phrase that to be extremely emotive, and he and I used to have a significant amount of, I guess you could say, philosophical or religious debate over the decades. It was one of the ways that he and I interacted, and I think we discussed and debated a lot of his worldview and defense of his faith in light of objective truth that I, as a young person, was trying to at least evaluate or understand, educating myself on critical thinking, on the idea and the concept of critical thought, and then utilizing my father's excellent apologetic skills from, on paper, he was a great apologist. In fact, he wrote a number of theses on the subject of religious apologetics. He was pretty good at it, and but we would the interactions, the times that we really spoke, I guess you could say man to man, really were kind of focused around these types of topics. We had a healthy ability to debate each other, and those debates came from love and came from a shared desire to test, for lack of a better term, our worldviews together. Now, that said, I think that especially in the later years, especially as I began to develop my own understanding of the world past when I was 5 or 6, I mean, I guess it's weird to be have religious debates with your father when you're 5 or 6, but I mean that's kind of how it's a small window into that piece of my past. But technology, the first real operationally useful or usable machine that I truly spent a lot of time on was the Epson QX-10. My father was, like I said, was a writer, and so basically he had been given a computer, an Epson QX-10, which was a CPM-based computer. Obviously, this was really probably, I don't even remember, 84, 80, mid to late 80s. I'll have to find out. He was a writer, and he was gifted a Epson QX-10 from the seminary that he was working with to facilitate his writing. Epson QX-10 is an interesting piece of technology history. Like I said, it was a Z80 microprocessor, CPM based. There's nothing like it really, but then again, everything is based upon those concepts, just like that's how technology works. And that's my kind of gist. When I was, so Epson QX-10 was basically the most practicable laptop, I guess you could say. I had owned a number, because I had scrounged when I was a kid. I would scrounge and go to ham-fests and do people's roofs for secondhand computer stuff. I would I did a demolition job at a bank and got paid with old computer equipment like Bernoulli drives and weird stuff that no one ever even talks about anymore. Those were my hot rods, right? And the PX8, the first laptop, I guess you could say, was more or less the same operating system as the QX-10 that used CPM based. The programs were in EPROMs, and you would remove the EPROM. Like if you wanted a word processor, you'd like, boop, you'd open the backup and put the WordStar chip in, and your 64K of main memory, etc. I learned a lot. A little LCD panel was the only output. Anyway, that opened a lot of doors for me in terms of it was my own little world. I wound up reading Technomancer, which is a really interesting book. I was very young at the time, and I wound up getting a 180 baud acoustic coupler, the rebranded Radio Shack version. I think Hayes originally did the acoustic coupler, and then Radio Shack at the time had rebranded it. It was an acoustic coupler, right? You took the headset, bloop, you plugged it in, and that was, and then you dialed a phone number. And so my social world, my worldview, the way that I tested my understanding of objectivity in a social context was through BBSs. In central Illinois, there were 4 or 5 of them. We were a poor family, of course, and we only had one telephone. One of my first statute of limitations is over, so I can say this. Like, I facilitated my worldview by crawling up an old telephone pole and stealing a telephone and interchange number. Ran my own cable into the house. Didn't get caught for years. Had 4 phone numbers like that. Ran a kind of a punk BBS, for lack of a better term. Searchlight BBS was my jam. And again, like I said, it was 180 baud was the beginning. 300 baud synchronous communications was huge. Anyway, GUI interfaces were a pipe dream. They were literally science fiction at the time. And my career and my lifespan, the capacity that these technologies have afforded the human race is almost incalculable. How much has changed from that time as a child to now. It is my job to understand technology. In fact, like my value proposition generally for work for an organization that pays me money for my work and my opinion, the value proposition is that I understand, because I have been directly involved and exposed to long before networks were a thing, long before GUI was a thing, long before the democratization of computation from a societal level was a thing. I was there. And even back then it was scary. My grandmother literally believed that I was being seduced by the devil, because from her worldview, which is, again, another thing that I want to talk about, because I was there during the emergence of during the engineering of lost cause rhetoric to what we have now. I lived it. My family was part of it. My father wrote about it. I've been to the conferences. I was at the very early stages of this kind of rot, human rot that is white Christian nationalism. I was there. And that and its marriage to technology, I have some unique viewpoints on. Using technology and, kind of using these tools to control and manipulate individuals that don't even understand what tools they're using. They are just seduced, for lack of a better term, into it because of the quote killer app or something that humans glom onto, that whether it was email or Facebook or whatever, that emergence of using the new tool set for the oldest sins, the newest tools for the oldest sins. I've lived that during my lifetime in a fundamental way. And as a professional, I have participated in the development of the internet. I have participated in the development of network concepts in general. Like a long time I've been doing this. And now we are kind of dealing with the fact that just like when fire was invented, or when, here's a better analogy. When they started wiring houses in Edwardian England for electricity, and they started killing people because of it, because they didn't know kind of how to keep things safe, and the humans around it did not understand what was going on. Similar to like the X-ray booths at the state fair, everybody thought it was super cool. Hey, woo, this is cool. Oh, well, in fact, I'm actually developing cancer. That's basically what has happened with social computation, in my opinion. We gave a bunch of kids, metaphorically speaking, gave a bunch of children the ability to augment and alter their world by the use of technology. And we didn't teach them, or no one really thought about, well, a lot of people thought about the consequences, but from my perspective, the overarching good was the democratization of access to data, access to information. Because it's hard at this point for people who didn't live it to understand how much control. I mean, everybody talks about the what do they call it, the media, right? The mainstream media and how it controls the data flow, etc. If you didn't live before, what's a good cutoff, at least for this conversation? If you weren't participating before AOL exists, I don't think you can really grasp or grok. I don't think you can really emotionally grok what some of the fundamentals are with the situation that we are in now. We've given a whole bunch of monkeys very powerful typewriters that can alter other monkeys' perceptions without understanding exactly what we are doing, and that is, in my opinion, honestly, for all of the trouble that it has caused us. And I've expressed how my emotional reactions associated with the suspension of the Constitution. None of that, a lot of that is facilitated by the misuse of technology and the mishandling of, I don't know what I would call it skillful, but the direct manipulation of populace that does not understand the tools that they are using, and the direct main line that it has with our personal identities. Technology has become, and it always is, to be clear, especially personalized technology, it's very intimate. And I think that we still, as a culture, as a population, still are grasping with the naive notion that there is security when it comes to the information or the communications that we share via technological means. I think that one of the perspectives that I have, because I have absorbed and have lived with this for longer than the vast majority of the population, anecdotally, I have been exposed to, for instance, more internet porn than any of you. If you didn't go through adolescence without understanding the power of ASCII porn, then that's a side note. It's interesting to me because different tangent. The Tipper Gore conversation can be for a later time. Anyway, I'm already half an hour in, so let me get to the point. My job is to understand the interaction or the crossroads between humans and computers, or between humans and technology, and how those technologies can facilitate human purposes. In this case, in the case of what I'm doing here, human expression and the kind of the capturing of that in a moment in time. Technology and art are, in most cases, technology is art. It's the creation of the expression of how we are manipulating from an abstract standpoint, how we manipulate and control the world around us. That is what it is. Now, like I said, Epson QX-10, micro cassettes is how you would store the data. At the time, I remember reading in some of these early computer magazines, because of course there's no internet, LAN parties. This was before LAN parties, by the way. We used to call them BBS gatherings or BBS get-togethers. So every couple of months, all of the kind of techno nerds in the area would get together at a Denny's or whatever and furtively swap media or software that they'd been working on with 5.5-inch single-sided double density floppy disks. that was the good stuff. Anyway, I have lived in a world where there were very few people in my community and that really understood any of this. And like my grandmother viewed it as literally a tool of the devil. Her premise is that there was this giant computer. This is a kind of one of the fundamental seeds of the propagandic stew that has helped facilitate the current world crises. My grandmother believed truly and wholly that that the Antichrist, that the devil's minions, when they weren't buggering each other and sit down in hell, were up here manipulating people like me to create things to facilitate the New World Order, to bring about the Antichrist. And one of those things was this cabal of whatever ruling class. I don't even remember now where the lines were drawn in her mind. Built this secret brain computer in Europe called the ENIAC. And it was collecting all of people's data, and the mark of the beast was going to happen, and et cetera, et cetera. And there was a certain degree of prejudice from right off the bat of me embracing the idea of objective reality in a lot of ways. And my family, were truly concerned about my life and how I was being seduced to serve the Antichrist, which was this all-knowing, in their minds really, it was an AGI, or AGI. It was an artificial general intelligence run on an ENIAC in Europe. And I distinctly remember when this is fast forwarding to maybe when I was 9 years old, somewhere around there. My grandmother was very upset, my father's mother, and was trying to convince my father that I should be forbidden to pursue such things, such knowledge, And my father decided that, which was really kind of boils down from his perspective, his biggest failure with me. He believed that if I were given the information, I was smart enough to come to the same conclusions that they did. And so the best way to do it is to not limit me, but to kind of allow me to explore with not a lot of constraint, because clearly I was, even back then, he still told me I was a seeker of truth, and he knew the truth, right? And so regardless of what I was exposed to, the truth was going to set me free. The entrance of God's words, or whatever he referred to as such, was going to give me light and understanding to me as a simple person on how the world worked. The irony, of course, is that it was the exact opposite. And technology has always cut through things for me. Objective truth, the ability to garner data, look at it, evaluate it against other pieces of worldview, other pieces of data, other objective viewpoints, and come to a theoretical conclusion with the idea that that theory is always revisable given more or better information. Very simple critical thinking tool. Technology gave me the kind of ruler to measure that, or more access, to the social access, to have peers associated with this even as a young person, and gave me a sense of community that unlocked in most ways, and really in a visceral way, unlocked the world for me. My best friend at the time, you know, Matt, he's with me still. We're the greatest of friends. We've relied on each other for our entire lives. That culture was a big deal for us. It was a way for us to grow up. Computational interactions with humans and the way that these technologies change us, change the world, change our viewpoints, change our self-image. These are fundamental pieces of how technology interacts with us. And things are changing rapidly, a lot. The way that people interact with this data and I have some kind of language I want to start developing together around some of these concepts to kind of anthropomorphize certain types of emerging technologies so that they are easier for humans like us to really kind of grok or grasp or understand. I think that's important, especially these days, especially with the kind of cesspool of social networks. It's predictable, to be clear. The thing that most people are railing about how false information and TikTok is terrible and Facebook is horrible and the algorithm is being used to manipulate you. Yes, absolutely it is. But I think the focus is incorrect. What you should be thinking of is the algorithm is a tool, just like fire. Technologies are tools, just like fire. And you can either feed your family with it, or you can burn the world down with it. It is not, it's a lot more, the normal gun analogy where like, yeah, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Like, there are some social problems actually with that thesis. But I would adopt that and apply it to technology, especially computational technology right now, and say that that is very true. That really all these technologies are mirrors of us, and they allow us to interact and to express and to set the truth of ourselves free. But sometimes that is not good. Rather, that's the wrong way to say that. It's almost inevitable, but I think that we also have to embrace wisdom and understanding and realize that this is a necessary point in time for us to develop the skills to survive as a species with these tools being in our hands. And the old orders, the concepts such as the Constitution, the concepts such as oligarchy, the virulent nature of fascism, all of these things are not being created by the technology, but those who are, but they are being used for the furtherance of those goals. And so we as objective truth seekers, as understanders of the world, as people who really want to kind of express our humanity, we need to understand that. In conjunction with that, privacy. The reality is that if you've digitized something, and really there's nothing, firstly, there's nothing new under the sun, but secondarily, there are really no secrets that will never come out. Which is why we have to attenuate ourselves and our actions and how we compartmentalize our lives. But we're at a crossroads, and I want to share that with folks, with my fellow humans. I think the challenge is to live as if the algorithm knows all of you. To live in a truthful manner, to balance the negative impulses that you as a human have with the reality that you are in fact human. And sometimes those things that you feel are repugnant are actually beautiful. Sometimes the things that we find sacred are actually profane, and vice versa. I think that living your life as if you were hacked, there's some merit to that thought process. Doesn't mean that we want in any way, shape, or form to actually be hacked. Using that as an analogy, really as a pointed analogy, I guess. We need to integrate these types of more realistic ideas of privacy, expectations. We need to view those because the fire is marching on. I really do not believe at all that people really understand where we're heading when it comes to some of these computational techniques, and the fact that there are literally multiple generations now who have been living under the auspices of generalized tech data gathering, of having a digital footprint. I think that one of the things that people need to think about is that well, we'll just put it this way. Was your birth certificate digitized? Or was it digital when you were born? And your digital footprint, where did it start? From my perspective, it was pretty early on. I was doing some funky stuff with that modem and the old school hacky stuff, and using university modem banks to interconnect, to explore the world, blah, blah, blah. I have a very big digital footprint. But it's not as comprehensive as some of you because I wasn't born yet. I feel like that people like me, especially coming from an informed position as I am, is I think we have a unique perspective that is a transitional perspective that will go away. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm sharing all of this. What I think I'm saying is that if you think that your data is secure and will never be able to be accessed because of some fancy little password, it's just not the case. So the challenge is to live your life as if, live it with integrity, as if everyone knows everything about you. Doesn't mean you want that, but it does mean that that's the reality of it. Because eventually your data is going to wind up in the data lake, in the coal bed of humanity, and it could be used for the betterment of our species or the control and the detriment and the reinforcement of old power modalities and turn into a control mechanism, just like religion or whatever. Political control, financial control, etc. So I think today what I'm kind of, and I'm going to wrap this up because I'm already, this thing, spatial computing, artificial intelligence, which is basically just a data construct, quantum computation, we are at a crossroads and we have already passed it. Well, I mean, people talk about the kind of event horizon here or the singularity. Depending on how you cut it, in my opinion, the singularity began with the discovery or with the invention of Ed Bell Labs of the transistor. That was the singularity. From an effective standpoint, it's just everything else is just an expression of that birth. And that is not something that's going to stop. And so I think my challenge today, my thought pattern at least to share today, is to live your life with as much honesty as is possible, as is socially acceptable, as with as much honesty as consent allows, and to live your life as if everyone knows your secrets. Because they're going to. If you're lucky, it'll be when you're dead, and either people really care because they want to hear your story, or nobody cares. But what if you could actually embrace that fear and ask yourself why you're hiding things, whether it's out of fear of yourself or fear of repercussions or fear or an actual fear of the environment that you're in. There are millions of reasons why privacy is important. I think what I'm saying though is that privacy could conceivably be cooked. And so I think that as technology users in the 21st century, sure, we need to take steps. We need to understand our data. We need to control it. We need to fight for the civil right of controlling your private data. We need to adopt GDPR in the US. I believe access to your information is a civil right. That's not on the American books. That law, those groups of laws, that's not going to pass for a while. It's not going to pass. But GDPR, for instance, in Europe, I believe in my heart, it is a civil right for humans to control their private data. I will fight for that. But that is not a life that we're living right now. You do not have the civil right to control your data, especially in the US right now. So that's a distillation point. You need to look at your secrets, at what you think you're ashamed of, and figure out why, and either change those behaviors or come to grips with them in a positive, social, and socially acceptable, legally acceptable, and more importantly, consistent with the concept of consent. I think that is the challenge. That is the challenge for each of us. And it's going to become more so as the fight for civil liberties, as the fight for the ideas of democracy sharpen, as our enemies have spent generations making this current situation happen. We need to think in the same way. And part of that is understanding the tools that have been used to get us here, and to take them back over and to use them for good. Because honestly, we're the ones that built it anyway. Closed-minded religious magical thinking, supremacist, those types of things don't build the tools that I'm using to talk to you. That concept, it doesn't work that way. That's not how innovation works. And so we as technopunks need to understand what our tools are, why they were used the way they were, how they were used appropriately or inappropriately, effectively or ineffectively, refine those techniques, take back our tools, and democratize freedom with the use of these tools, and to bake it back into the self-image of our fellow citizens. And I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to do. And that's why I kind of gave a little bit of background on where I'm coming from a tech standpoint. I am an informed consumer, we'll just put it that way. And I think that from a generational standpoint, it's especially important these days to establish kind of a proper mindset of understanding some of the fire that we're playing with. And I think a good kind of way to think about that is going to be, was your birth certificate digitized or was it digital to begin with? Because we are now living in a world where the generations, the job market generations, the young people, the people that are going to be shaping this world, they didn't live the way that I did. They just didn't. And the big part of that is technology. And the perspective of individuals such as myself, I think, are going to be historically important because of context, because I lived in a world where this stuff did not exist. I lived and grew up in a different world where the mentality and the tools and the ways to manipulate individuals and the way to lie to them and control them was different. And so people like me, I think, are a touch point of understanding that it will be important in the future, because unless humanity forces itself to degrade to the point where, I don't even know how you would do that now, to be honest. Like, there's kind of this fantasy of, well, the world comes to an end and technology doesn't work anymore, and, like the Book of Eli, that movie where like his prized possession is this old iPod that barely works, and it's precious to him because it's a sound of the past. That's a powerful image, to be clear. But I don't think that that's actually our fate. Now with ubiquity of computational devices, with literally the comprehension and what's the right word? With technology becoming a universal language for human expression and human existence, you're not going to get away from humans having these tools anymore. Like, just even if the world comes to an end, you imagine you can do a lot with a bunch of old Raspberry Pis and a solar panel. We'll just put it that way. You can do a lot. And those individuals, the young people that would be the survivors now, that's just like reading a book for some of those folks. That's the world that they lived in, where, again, computer literacy, especially software programming literacy, critical thinking, those are fundamental languages to at least 2 generations now. And we need to understand that, and we need to embrace that, and not kind of like sit on our lawns and say, back in my day, the ENIAC would tell us what to do, and it was much easier, and blah, whatever. It's just a waste of time. Anyway, so I gotta go use technology to make money to feed my family today. So I hope you have a great day, and yeah, that's it. Talk to you later.